Hello, today we're going to do Module 5, Lesson 11. Our objective is that we're going to compare unit fractions with different size models representing the whole. So we're going to figure out if a fraction is compared with if I have two fractions, how do their sizes compare? Okay, first off, just a quick review. We've touched on it a little bit. I want to just be sure you understand it. Please write these fractions on your paper. Okay, we've got 1/2, 3/2, 1/3, and 5/3. How does that compare with one whole? Is it greater than, or less than one whole? So I'm writing one whole after each one. I wish that you would do that too. Now, let's compare. 1/2, is that greater than or less than one whole? It's less than one whole, isn't it? What about 3/2? Is that greater than or less than one whole? It is greater than. Why is it greater than? Because what does a whole need? A whole needs to be 2/2. 3/2 is definitely more than 2/2. All right, 1/3. How does that compare with a whole? It's just a piece of it, isn't it? So 1/3 would be less than one whole. What about 5/3? 5/3 is going to be greater than one whole. Why? It's going to be greater than one whole because if I have broken into thirds, how many thirds do I need to make a whole? I need 3. Well, 5 is greater than 3. Okay. Now, let's move on to the next thing. We need to do our application problem. Okay, this time we have 3 girls. Rachel, Sylvia, and Lola each received the same homework assignment, but they only completed part of it. Rachel completed 1/6 of hers. So let's underline Rachel. Completed 1/6 of hers. Sylvia completed 1/2 of hers. And Lola completed 1/4 of hers. Write the amount of homework each girl completed from least to greatest. Okay, and draw a picture to prove my answer. Okay, so right off the bat, we have 3 fractions. We have 1/6, 1/2, and 1/4. Let's write the fractions in order from least to greatest. So do you remember what we were looking at last time? The more parts it has, the smaller the pieces are, right? Okay, so 1/6 is my largest number down here on the bottom, so that means it's cut into the most pieces. So the pieces are going to be the smallest. So let's put 1/6 first. Then what would come next? 1/4 or 1/2? 4 pieces or 2 pieces? Well, 4 pieces are going to be smaller. So we're going to do it 1/4 and 1/2. Now, we need to draw a picture to prove our answer. Okay, so I think the easiest way is going to be to draw fraction strips. So I'm going to draw 3 fraction strips. Try to make them about the same. Now, because it's all about the same homework, looks like I've gone a little bit long on these sides. Some crazy wind behind me, isn't it? Alright, here we go. Now, 1/6 is our smallest, so we need to make this one into 1/6. Now, the best way I know how to do it is to make a third, make them into thirds, and then cut the thirds in half. So between here and here, I cut this area in half. Between here and here, I cut this area in half. Between here and here, I cut this area in half, and that helps me make my fractions just a little bit more accurate. Okay, so who had 1/6? Rachel. So we need to write Rachel over here. Now, how much did she do? She did 1 of it, so I need to shade in 1. Okay? My next one was 1/4. Okay, so I know that if I cut it in half, that gives me 2 parts. Now if I cut from here to here in half, I get a quarter. From here and here, I get a quarter or 1/4. Okay, and I'm going to shade in 1. Now, who had this one? Who did 1/4? Sylvia did 1/2, Lola did 1/4. So we need to write Lola here. Now, we've got 1/2. Well, that was pretty simple. Okay, and now I'm going to shade that part in. I lost my mouse. There we go. Okay, and who had this one? Sylvia had this one. Okay, so did we just show? Now, the best way to write this when we put them in order, another way we can write them is like this. Go ahead and copy this. So, which one's greater than or less than? 1/6 is less than. 1/4 is less than 1/2. So we can put just like that. Okay? Now, we have now just shown the fractions. We've shown them in order. We've shown them why they're in order because of the model that we drew. Okay? Now, moving on. Okay. Now, I want you to think about something. Okay, I want you to think about, let's think about root beer. Okay, I can buy root beer in a couple of ways. One way I can buy root beer for my family is to purchase it in a container that looks like this, right? And this container, and here's my label, right? This is root beer. This is a 2-liter container. Another way that I can purchase root beer is to buy a can of root beer. And when I buy, whoa, find my pencil, it's going crazy all over the place. Okay. When I buy it, here's my little tab. Okay, and here's my label. Now, I can buy it in a 2-liter bottle, and I can buy it in a can. Now let's just say that my family has friends over, and they drink half of the 2-liter bottle. They drank half of it. But then, Carl, my son, took his can, he found a can, and he drank half of his can. Now last I checked, 1/2 equals 1/2, right? So this half right here, I'm going to shade it in, should equal this half. Is that true? Is that true? Is this half equal to this half? No, they're not. Are they? You know, you've drinking half of a can of soda. You've seen half of a 2-liter of soda. You know that this has a lot more liquid than this, doesn't it? So, just because they have the same fraction does not mean that they mean the same things, does it? It depends on the size, the entire size of the object or the item or whatever it is that's cut, that's divided, okay? So, because the 2-liter bottle is so much bigger than the can of soda, 1/2 of a 2-liter is considerably larger than 1/2 of a can of soda, isn't it? Okay. Now, let's talk about that just a little bit more. Let's say, I'm going to change my color back to black. Okay, let's say that I am, and this morning for breakfast, I had a glass of orange juice. Okay, and my glass of orange juice looks like this. Okay. And I drank 1/4 of it. So I'm going to divide it into 4ths. So I cut it in half. Let's see, we'll make it kind of look like it's rounded down here. Okay, so I'm going to cut this in half because from here to here in half, and then from here up to here in half. And I drank 1/4 of my orange juice. Okay, my orange juice. Now, my baby brother drank 1/2 of his, but this was his glass. So he's just a baby, so he just has a little glass. Find my mouse. Okay, so he drank half of his glass. Okay? Now, due to the size of our glasses, I drank 1/4 and he drank 1/2. And normally, if we're comparing fractions, we're assuming that we're comparing the fractions that are exactly the same size, and we would say that 1/4, whoa, is less than 1/2, right? That would make sense. However, in this case, because the size of the item being divided, it is not true, is it? Looking at this picture, 1/2 of my baby brother's cup is a lot smaller than 1/4 of my big cup, isn't it? Okay. So, what I would also like you to see, now this would make sense over here. I just want to show you, this right here would make sense. It doesn't make sense here because the cup is bigger and this cup is smaller. This would make sense if everything was the same size, or pretty darn close. Okay, so if I cut this one in, ooh, not there. I could do that a little better. Okay, so I cut this one in half, and I can cut this one in 4. So I'm going to cut these two in halves. This in half, this half in half. That gives me 4 pieces. Now, look at this. This is definitely the larger part, isn't it? This is definitely the smaller part. So that would make this true. Correct? But look at my strips. They're pretty close to the same size. They are not different sizes like this. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about proving our work. Okay? Let's say that I tell you that 1/6 is less than 1/3. Okay? Are you going to believe everything I say? No, you shouldn't believe everything I say. You should prove it. Or you should have me prove it even. So you need to prove it when you do your work to me, right? Okay, so let's do this. This is 1/6. How are we going to prove it? Let's prove it with a picture. So I'm going to make a strip. And then I'm going to make another strip. This is going to be 1/6. And this one is going to be 1/3. I'm going to try to make my strips just about the same size. Because remember, making them different sizes makes the fraction completely. You can't compare them very well, can you? Okay, so here we go. 1/6 divided into 1/6. Okay, so I know that if I cut it into thirds, just kind of eyeball it. Then if I cut this in half right here, this third in half, I cut this third in half. If I cut this third in half, I made it pretty equal. Okay? Shade in 1/6. Now, this one is 1/3. If I kind of use the same lines, so things are, see how I kind of compared when I was drawing? It's kind of showed me how I needed to make it so it'd be as equal as possible. Okay, so now I need to shade in 1/3. Okay, now, just by showing this, by posting this picture, and by labeling it and coloring in one of them, have I proven that this is true? Absolutely I have. Now, if I'm sloppy and I make this a smaller picture than this, then I didn't prove it correctly, did I? This is just like our glasses of orange juice. All right, good luck with your homework. I'll see you soon.